All right, Tom, let's start at the beginning. What first attracted you to Rotary, and how would you say that those early years shaped your journey?
Well, thank you very much for having me here today. And that is a wonderful question. I was first attracted to Rotary because of the service opportunities and, of course, the friendships and the fellowship that you have with others. When we do our annual survey, our member survey, typically the number one answer of why people join Rotary and Rotaract is actually for that friendship. So we need to make sure that we give time in our club and district meetings at our zone institutes for people to spend time together.
Fantastic, thank you. Good.
And what I learned early on, it's interesting because I first tried to join Rotary back in early 1990s.
Mm.
I was an assistant district attorney in the city I was living in, and I had just aged out of JC's, which is another
Yep,
nonprofit that young people
yep.
used to when it was around did service. Well, when I tried to join the Rotary Club, they told me I wasn't allowed to join because the law enforcement classification was taken by my boss. Since
Yep.
she had that slot, I wasn't able to join. So for 17 years, I actually didn't join Rotary. And then I eventually moved to San Francisco and then Minneapolis. And the gentleman I work out with across the street, and this was a while back, he asked me about a dozen times to come to his Rotary Club. And of course, at first, I felt rejected by Rotary. But I went to that first meeting after he asked me a dozen times, and I was hooked. The people were nice, loved the meetings, loved the service.
Yep.
But it taught me a valuable lesson about membership, and
Mm.
that is we need to be persistent. There's been a number of friends that I've asked who it might not be the right time now, but years down the road, it's a great time.
Yep.
I meet at a club, a Tuesday morning at a country club. And sometimes that doesn't work for people because here in the US, people take their children to the school bus stop in the morning.
Yep.
But when the students get to high school or college, university, they no longer have that obligation. So you
Yep.
need to be persistent in our asks.
So never give up, yeah?
Never give up.
You currently, Tom, you have a position now as Rotary International's chair for membership growth. Could you say a little bit more about what that role entails and what goals have you and your team set out for yourselves?
Absolutely. We have a wonderful committee, and the committee has a term of reference, and the terms of reference require us to make recommendations to the Rotary International Board of Directors so they can decide how to move forward on membership issues.
Mhm.
And we have a great committee, representatives from all over the world, about 15 folks on the committee. And the important thing, what we're trying to do this year is we're trying to be active and actually do things and not just talk about things. We recently changed the terms of reference so that individuals on the committee not only make recommendations to the board, but go back to their regions and their zones and their districts and clubs and actually push membership. Now, the goal is pretty clear. Recently, the Rotary International Board of Directors set a goal. It's a 5-year goal. I know most of our goals are 3-year rolling goals, but this is a 5-year goal. Starting this year, we want to have a net 25,000 increase in membership every year from this year to 2030. The significance being in 2030, we have our 125th anniversary. So that will actually take us to 1.25 million Rotarians at our 125th anniversary. So that's the goal.
And how do you feel about that goal?
It is an ambitious goal
Yeah,
because when you look at it over the last years, we're usually about a negative 1 to 2% loss per
yeah,
year.
yeah.
5 years ago, we had a modest growth that was wiped out the year after. Last year, we did a pretty good job because we were only at negative 0.85. So if you take that 2 to 2.1% increase, but factor in that we're usually 1 point down, that's a 3% increase.
Yes.
And of course, every year we don't make it, then we have to make more the next year. But we're working really hard with our current president, Francesco, our president-elect, Yinka, and our president, Rotary International president nominee, Larry Lunsford, along with the membership committee and actually the communications committee to come up with the right message to get down to our club presidents, because the reality is nothing happens unless it happens at the club. So we're working with the Pets Alliance, the Multi-District Pets Alliance, to make sure that we adequately teach the organizers of our president learning events, whether it be president-elect training seminar or president-elect learning seminar, to make sure that we get those president-elects on board for why we need to grow Rotary, what we need to do to grow Rotary, and how to do it.
Okay, very good. Let's talk about membership attraction in the first place. Yeah, bringing new people in. What do
Mhm.
you think are some of the more effective ways you've seen around the world in clubs that can continuously bring in new members over time?
Well, thank you very much for asking that question. And one thing you could take away from this, the most important thing when it comes to attraction is being intentional about it.
Mm.
There's all kinds of different ways to be intentional. But when I was president of my club, before that time, I would bring in 5 to 6 members every year. But when I was president, along with the help of others, I brought in 31 members. And you might wonder why so many in that year. Well, I was intentional about it. When I was going to board meetings before I was club president, we would always do the same thing. We'd review the minutes, we'd look at the financials, we'd talk about the upcoming socials or service projects, never talked about membership. When I was president of my club, we put that first on the agenda. And I was sure that when I brought people in, I didn't think that I should be bringing them in and not sharing them with everyone else. So we assigned an individual intentionally that matched the demographics of the person we were bringing in. So if I had a friend who was a retired female, I'd fix her up with another friend
Yes.
from my club who's a club member who's a retired female.
Right.
So we looked at, and again, you could do this many different ways, but this is the one way that really worked well for me and my club.
Yeah. Okay.
We
Thank you for
looked
that.
at, yep, and let me give you an example too.
Yeah.
We had a structure on how we did it. So we took the English alphabet from A to Z, and we looked at who was in our club. For A, we said, did we have an architect? Did we have an accountant? For B, did we have a bookkeeper? Did we have a banker? And we went all the way through. We started, and when we got to L, I think, we had a librarian, and we had a landscaper. We never got to Z for zookeeper.
Zookeeper.
We never got there. But the point is, everyone thought about it and they thought, my brother-in-law is an accountant. Hmm, my sister-in-law, she's a banker. So, it's not hard to do, but you have to do it and you have to be intentional.
Intentional. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. That aspect of intentionality, I've personally felt made a difference. Yeah. So
Yes, absolutely.
now that members are already in, what have you seen as effective ways of keeping them engaged?
Well, thank you so much for asking that question. We bring in about 150,000 people into Rotary International every year,
Yeah.
but most years we lose about 160,000. And the concerning part to me is when we lose them. We lose 10% of our members within the first year of them joining. And within the first 3 years of them joining, we lose just over 50%.
Wow.
So after we get them in for 3 years, then they feel like they're true Rotarians like us.
Yeah.
They're coming to your institute, they're coming to my institute. But we got to keep them engaged. And every club does something different. My wife's club, they assign every new member to a new committee. What
Mm.
I like to do is make sure that they meet everyone, that they get to be friends with people. There's certain ways to do it. I used to, when I was club president, hand out a playing card to everyone who came in. And if you got a heart, then you'd have to sit at the table that had a stanchion with a heart on it. Um, then other times what I would do is we get a new member, I would buy a little frame of and put their photograph in it. Then I would take that photograph and move it around, because sometimes people like to sit in the same spot. And I tried first of all to get everyone to move, and I was somewhat successful in that. But then I found out if we actually move the individual coming in, they're more flexible because they're not used to that seat and they get to know people. But just getting them involved. New member orientations are important, because it gives realistic expectations of what they have to do in dues, what they have to do in terms of time and that kind of thing. But it must be a two-way conversation. If it's just us telling them, hey, this is what our club's about, and not listening to them, we're missing out because maybe they have experience with youth exchange with another organization that they can use here. But definitely service projects are helpful. Um, both local projects and international projects. But the other thing we need to do if we want Rotary to grow overall is not just talk about our club, but talk about the broader Rotary, talk about the action groups and the fellowships. And you can decorate the parade float that Rotary has in the Pasadena Rose Bowl parade. You could be a paid observer at our Council on Legislation, which is our parliament, or you could be a paid observer to our International Assembly, where we train our incoming district governors. There's so many different things to do, but so many times clubs just talk about what they do and not what other clubs in their district do. So that's another good way to get engagement.
That's a great segue into my next question, which is today at our current institute that's we're having in November, it's a collection of districts, yeah? And we have a
Mhm.
lot of district officers listening to your video today. This thing about membership, is it primarily a club matter or do districts have any real role to play here?
So, as I said before, everything happens at the club. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen on the 18th floor of Rotary headquarters in Evanston. It happens at the club.
Mhm.
That said, there are roles that a district can play. When I go around the world and see different kinds of best practices, and not everything works in every area of the world, but one thing I love is what the Philippines does as a district.
Mm.
What the Filipinos do is they actually have a district-wide orientation. So, and they do it once a quarter. So all the clubs bring their new members, and then they might have to wait for a month or two before they get to go. But at that meeting, they bring in someone, they brought me in before, and I talk about everything you can do in Rotary. The things we mentioned about the fellowships and the action groups and all those kind of things. Because if someone gets disillusioned in their club because they don't like the club culture, we don't want them to leave Rotary. If they
Yeah.
leave Rotary, they might have to come up with a reason why they left, and it might not be positive. But if the district did something like start, first of all, those orientations, but also start a district-wide e-club. And here in the States, North Carolina, a few years ago, they started three, and all they did was call all the people who left their clubs within the last 5 years and say, why did you leave? Some of them left because there was a personality conflict. Some of them left because they had job changes. But most of the people they talked to, they actually wanted to stay in Rotary. They just didn't know anything beyond their club. So I would say if I were a district, try that district-wide orientation and also try to have a district-wide e-club. And one other thing, we talked about, and you're hitting all the right points. You're talking about attraction, you're talking about engagement and retention. But one thing the district can do better, I respectfully submit, than a club could do is start a new club. And why do I say that? Because you have district governors and assistant district governors who are looking around the landscape in your district and they see the opportunity when you can do that. A lot of time clubs wrongly assume that if they start a new club, it'll take away the membership of their current club. And I heard that so much, especially at President-elect learning sessions, that I asked Brian King, who's the head staff person at Rotary International, if that was true or not. He didn't have any statistics, so they did a study. And it turns out that 85% of new club members are new to Rotary.
Mhm.
And it can be easily said that some of those who left their club to join a new club may have left anyway because they weren't comfortable in that club. So I think a district has a particular role to play there also.
Okay, that's very good. What about family members?
Mhm.
How do you bring them in? Are they an important factor? The obvious answer is yes, they are an important factor. But how do you deal with them?
When I was club president, I really focused on bringing in spouses and partners of our current members. If you think about it, we have low-hanging fruit. Family members are fruit on the ground, easy to pick up because they already know the Rotary message. They've already seen what we do with youth exchange. They've seen what we've done with RILA. And a lot of times, if you just have one person of a family involved in Rotary, sometimes that family, the other family members feel like Rotary's taking that person away from their family. But if you ask them to join, then becomes a family affair. I tell you, my wife is so into Rotary right now because she's her club secretary of the largest club in our district, and she'll be president in 3.5 years.
Yes.
And then our son, who's a second year at university, he started a Rotaract club,
Yes.
and it has a satellite Rotaract club, and together they have 35 people in it. So,
Fabulous.
now we go to international conventions together as family vacations, things like that.
Yep.
But it doesn't have to be that much involvement, but just including the family members. And it's a simple ask. When you do a service project, ask them to come along with. It'll make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Tom, we're heading slowly to the end of our conversation today already. Now, my question is there something I haven't asked you? Is there something you want to say about membership and attraction and engagement?
Well, I think one thing, and you did a great job by asking all the right questions, but one thing I want people to think about is why. Why do we want to grow Rotary?
Mm,
And the simple answer is we want to do more good in the world. And
mm,
if we have more hands and hearts for service, we'll have greater impact for the people who need it the most. And if you're a club president, I tell you, if you have to focus on one thing, I know we have all these things and all these goals, but if you focus on membership growth, everything gets better. You'll have more people for fundraising. You'll have more people for service projects. You'll give more to polio. You'll have more major donors. Everything gets better. And there's nothing better than you're a club president bringing your friends in and seeing new smiling faces every week. And we did talk about attraction. We did talk about engagement or retention. We talked about new clubs. But one of the important things you have to do is you have to do all three of those at the same time. There's always arguments. First of all, there's an argument. Are we a service organization or are we a membership organization? And our governing documents and everything else, it's pretty clear we're a membership organization. 70% of our revenue comes from our memberships, but we are participant centered, which means we look at our members, we look at other people we serve, and we make sure that we do what's best for them. And how do we know what's right? You know, the number one reason people join a club and leave a club is because of the culture or the club experience. So if we can do a survey, it doesn't have to be complicated, it could be simple, once a year. And why once a year? Because our club culture is always changing because new people are joining, other people are leaving, and it might be different. But we need to ask our members, do you like where we meet, when we meet? Do you like our socials? Do you like our service projects? And if we're intentional about that, we're going to attract the people, they're going to be engaged, and they're going to feel comfortable like they belong. And they'll start asking their friends and families and coworkers and people they worship with and exercise with. So be intentional, keep at it. And if you need any help, I'm always here to help. So thank
Thank
you.
you very much.